I think I'm live. I never know. I never know when I'm live on this thing. I think I'm live. Hello, I'm live. Welcome. This is David with MBLEx Test Prep, coming to you live from my closet. Again, if you need explanation, the pandemic has forced my wife to work at home, and this is where we have set up our office to keep us away from the children, who make a lot of noise, as some of you know. So this really quick live stream, I'm planning on half an hour or so. I want to let you know a couple Black Friday deals. I know it's a couple days past Black Friday, as I can't talk this early in the morning. It's 9:42 a.m. where I'm at. So a couple Black Friday deals. So of course I do offer tutoring. I do have tutoring packages, pre-recorded tutoring packages. Every single tutoring session that I've done up until this point, I am offering to you for one low price. I have two separate packages. One includes this study guide, the MBLEx Test Prep Comprehensive Study Guide and Workbook 2021 edition, brand new, hot off the presses, never been opened, I suppose. I guess here. Now I opened it. There you go. One package includes that and 25 hours of video and audio. So you get every video tutoring session and every audio that you can put on your phone, like I have done. And you can listen to it like a music album. Let me pull it up really quick. Wait, that's not it. You can upload it to your phone, listen to it like a music album on the go, anywhere you want to learn. Let's do this one. This album, there we go. So here's one on, medical terminology. Here are all the tracks that go into it. So you can listen on the go. You can learn on the go with that. Really awesome. Really awesome. So I have all of that as one package. You get the study guide, you get the videos, the tutoring videos, and the tutoring audio split up into albums like that for a low price of $149.99. If you already have my study guide, you're not out of luck. I can get you the audio and the video, which includes a full practice test, by the way, a full 100 question practice test with a video where we go over it together, and the audio so you can listen to it on the go as well. All of that is included in both packages. If you just want the stuff without the study guide, if you already have the study guide, it's only $124.99. So if you are looking for a way to learn on kind of a budget, you're not going to find a better deal than that. Like I said, 25 hours of tutoring audio and video for you. All you have to do is go to my website. There should be a little thing at the top that says shop. You click on that, it takes you right to the page where you can order your package. If you want the complete package that includes a study guide, if you want the digital package that doesn't include a study guide but it includes all the tutoring, that's where you got to go. Okay, so of course, if you just want the study guide, you don't want the tutoring, you can find that on Amazon.com. There is no special Black Friday price. I personally would go with the complete tutoring package. You get everything, including the study guide. It saves you about $130 off the normal price. Definitely a heck of a deal for sure. Okay, so how the MBLEx Test Prep live stream works is you ask questions and I answer them. So what questions do you have? Whatever questions you have, just put them in the little chat over here so I can read them and we can talk about things that you are confused about in regards to the MBLEx. Okay. So what questions do you have? Otherwise, I'm just going to keep talking like I do. And of course, people get mad at me for talking during a live stream, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, well, let's see. What information maybe should we go over? I'm looking through my book to find some information to go over as I wait for somebody to ask me questions. Okay. Now, somebody recently told me that they did to prepare for the MBLEx is they actually tried to simulate the testing center as much as possible. So they put on headphones, noise canceling headphones, just like you can have in the testing center. They put on a mask, just like you're going to have to wear when you are taking your test. and they tried to do everything on the computer, as much as possible on the computer, and they just tried to simulate that environment, and it worked for them. They said that they passed the test and everything went great. So that might be something that you can try as well, especially if you have something like test anxiety. You don't want to be super stressed out and suddenly be confronted with, hey, I have to wear this mask the entire time, or there's too much noise, other people taking the test in the testing center, too much noise. Put on those headphones and put on that mask and prepare yourself for that kind of environment, so that you're not going to be super stressed out when you are in that environment. Okay. So that's something that somebody told me that they did that really worked for them, and I think it's a good idea, something that you can try. Simulate the testing center, especially in these times where going into a testing center is going to be a little more challenging for you, because there are extra precautions that you have to take. Okay. So let's see. So again, just put your comment, chat with me in the chat section, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about whatever it is you are confused with. Okay. So something that a lot of people have trouble kind of thinking about is the difference between an origin and an insertion in regards to muscles. Okay. Origins and insertions, we define which one based on what happens at those attachment sites. So 99% of the time, the origin is going to be the more fixed attachment site of a muscle. The insertion is going to be the part of the muscle that actually pulls on the bone that produces an action. Okay, let me get my skeleton really quick. It might be easier with a, hold on, what's that? With a visual demo. Okay. So I got my skeleton. He has a little bit of torticollis going on here. Lean into the side. Okay. So an example. Well, let's use brachialis as an example. It's an easy one. So this red spot right here, that's the origin of brachialis. When we're talking about muscles on the limbs, the origin is always going to be more proximal than the insertion. So it's going to be closer to the rest of the body because it has to pull on bones that are distal. So the insertion is going to be more distal. Okay. So the origin of brachialis is right here on the anterior distal shaft of the humerus. There's no like one specific point, like a lot of bony landmarks or a lot of muscles will attach to specific bony landmarks, like the deltoid inserts under the deltoid tuberosity. Unfortunately, some of these, it's just a general area of a bone that they attach to. Right, so brachialis will originate right here on the anterior distal shaft of the humerus, and then it will move distally. The muscle fibers will go distally right down here onto the coronoid process and the ulnar tuberosity right here, these two spots right here. Okay. And when that muscle contracts, the insertion will move towards the origin, and that produces this action, elbow flexion. And I know our last live stream, we had a discussion on flexion and extension, which is which. And of course, if anybody's new, send your chat, send any message in the chat, and I'll read it and respond. That's how the live stream works. Don't leave me hanging. So the insertion will move towards the origin, and that will produce elbow flexion, where we decrease the angle of that joint. So you can see, as we're talking, the insertions, the coronoid process, and the ulnar tuberosity are distal to the origin. So the origin is always going to be, on the limbs anyway, the origin is always going to be more proximal than the insertion. So the insertion, when that muscle contracts, the insertion will move towards the origin and make that muscle shorter. Okay, so that's an isotonic contraction where the tension of the muscle stays the same, but the length changes. So that muscle length decreases and that produces flexion of the elbow with brachialis. Okay, so the origin. Let's do another example of origin and insertion. Let's go down here. So we have a muscle that originates here on the anterior inferior iliac spine. Let's see if you can get that muscle. What muscle originates on the anterior inferior iliac spine? Give you a second to think about that. And it comes all the way down here on the anterior side of the thigh and inserts right here onto the tibial tuberosity. That muscle is part of the quadriceps muscle group. That muscle is rectus femoris. Okay. Rectus femoris originates on the anterior inferior iliac spine and goes all the way down to the tibial tuberosity. So the origin is more proximal than the insertion because it's a muscle on the limb. Okay? And when that muscle contracts, the thigh or the hip, excuse me, will move into flexion because the insertion is moving towards the origin. It's getting shorter, and if it contracts down here, the knee will straighten or extend. So those are the two actions of rectus femoris. We have flexion of the hip and extension of the knee. Now, something some people might be a little confused with is how to stretch a muscle. And stretching a muscle isn't really too complicated. Okay. So to stretch a muscle, basically all you have to do is the opposite actions of that muscle. So if rectus femoris is responsible for flexing the hip and extending the knee, all you have to do are the opposite actions, and that will stretch that muscle. So flexion of the hip, extension of the knee. To stretch rectus femoris, we extend the hip and flex the knee, and that would lengthen that muscle. That would take the insertion away from the origin, and that's really all stretching is moving the insertion of a muscle away from its origin. So you're taking it the opposite direction of what it would do if it were contracting and shortening. Okay, so flexion of the hip, extension of the knee would shorten that muscle, the rectus femoris, and extension of the hip and flexion of the knee would stretch it. A lot of these things you can use your body to figure these out. Think about how you would stretch your body if you were doing something like exercise or playing a sport or anything like that. How would you stretch these out? And we do a lot of these stretches all the time, right? Think about in high school gym class, they tell you before everything, we have to stretch. And we would do this stretch where we reach back and we would grab onto our foot and bring our foot to our glutes like that to stretch out our quadriceps. Right, that puts our hip into extension and our knee into flexion. That stretches out that muscle. Okay, so it really simple ways to think about this stuff, and a lot of this stuff is stuff that you use in your everyday life. It's just figuring out the wording of the problems on the MBLEx that a lot of people have trouble with. But if you can break down the wording, and unfortunately, it is going to be a little difficult to break down the wording. It's the MBLEx is worded just so strangely, and they like throwing a lot of information into a test question. If you're able to actually decipher the test question and break it down into the most important parts of the question, you figure out exactly what the question is asking. I know that's like obviously you want to figure out what the test question is asking, but there's a lot of information that they throw into these test questions, and if you're not able to take it one step at a time and think logically about every single part of this test question, you may overlook some really important information. So when you are reading these questions, you have to take your time. You have to read every single question. You have to make sure you know what the question is asking. And some questions are asking something actually really simple, but they give you so much information in these test questions that make it seem like it's really difficult. So break down those test questions into the easiest terms possible. Everybody has a different definition of what the easiest term possible is. So whatever works for you, whatever helps you to understand that information. Like if there's a test question saying somebody has a chronic condition that has persisted. Chronic and persistent are essentially the same thing when we're talking about medical conditions. So, I mean, that tells you if, they're just throwing in extra information that you don't really need. If somebody has chronic condition like bronchitis or something like that, yes, it's going to be a condition that has persisted over a period of time. So it's figuring out what words are important and what words are not, and then going from there when you're trying to break down these test questions. Okay. So you're able to figure out, I know I go off on kind of tangents. You're able to figure out the important information, and it could be asking you something as simple as, how do you stretch the rectus femoris? What position do you have to put the body in to stretch the rectus femoris? Hip extension, knee flexion. But again, it's worded in such a way where it might confuse you with some of the terms that it's using. So get used to breaking down test questions and become really good at figuring out what a test is asking. Okay. And of course, that brings me back to the tutoring packages that I offer. Go to my webpage, click on the store link, that'll take you to them. I do have a 100 question practice test that you can take and follow along on video or audio that you get access to. So in that test, I do help you figure out how to break down a lot of these test questions. And I tried to make this test a lot more difficult than some of the tests in my book because I want it to simulate an MBLEx experience as close as I can get it. Again, I don't work for the FSMTB, despite what a lot of people think. They don't pay me. I don't know what's on the test. I don't have access to those questions. If I did, my job would be a lot easier and everybody would pass if they got my stuff. But unfortunately, I do what I can. Okay, I try to word them as closely to the MBLEx as I can, and that's what I did with this brand new test that is offered with these tutoring packages that I have for sale. Just go to MBLExTestPrep.com, click on the store link, that'll take you to them. I think that alone is extremely valuable and worth the price of admission. Getting access to that test, taking that test, and then watching the video after you take that test to figure out, how can I test better? What are strategies that I use that actually work? What are strategies I use that maybe don't work? What can I improve on when it comes to breaking down test questions and eliminating answers and identifying keywords and figuring out what test questions are actually saying? I think that's extremely beneficial. I don't think you'll get nothing negative could come from it. So definitely check that out. Again, I have the two packages. I have one with my study guide and 25 hours, excuse me, with 25 hours of video and audio for you to download and watch. I have one that's just the audio and video without the study guide. So if you already have my study guide, you are set. You don't have to worry about getting an extra copy of my study guide. Okay. So go to MBLExTestPrep.com, click on the store link, and you'll find the page where you can purchase those tutoring packages. Okay. So $149.99 for the one with the study guide, $124.99 for the one without. That saves you, got the one with the study guide, you're saving about $130. So that's my exciting Black Friday deal for you. $130 off. Like, that's outrageous. That's an outrageous price. So definitely check that out. You'll learn a lot, I promise. And you'll be able to learn whenever and wherever you want, because you can put the audio onto your phone using a program like iTunes. You download it to your computer. You use something like iTunes to put it on your phone, and you can listen wherever you are, whenever you want to listen and learn. And I don't see any downside to it personally. So anyway, we got off track here. So we were talking about origins and insertions and the where they are in the body. Okay, so we were talking about origins. When they are muscles that attach to the limbs, the origin is going to be more proximal, closer to the rest of the body than the insertion. So the rectus femoris, the origin up here, the anterior inferior iliac spine, and the insertion is down here, more distal, the tibial tuberosity. Okay. So with the muscles of the trunk, it's a little bit different, where you can have origins that are more inferior than the insertions and vice versa. It's like, we'll use trapezius as an example. It has multiple origins, but here's one example. The superior nuchal line right here, this red mark, originates there and then inserts down here on the spine of the scapula and over here on the clavicle as well. Also originates over here on the vertebrae and all the way down here on the spinous processes of the thoracic vertebrae. So that's an example where you have an origin that's superior to the insertion, but also medial to the insertion and inferior to the insertion. So the trunk, you can't really apply those rules to like you can with the limbs, where the origin is always going to be more proximal than the insertion. The muscles of a trunk, you just have to know where the attachment sites are. Unfortunately, you can't use a really easy strategy like origin is more proximal than the insertion to identify the attachment sites on the muscles of the trunk. Luckily, there aren't too many muscles of the trunk. And the fun thing is, if you know the action of some of these muscles, then you can kind of figure out where the origin and insertions are. Again, where a muscle inserts is where it will move a bone. Okay, so 99% of the time, if a muscle inserts onto a bone, it's going to move that bone. If it originates on a bone, it doesn't move that bone. Okay. So if I know that the rhomboids will retract the scapula, I think about that action. What retraction is moving a structure posteriorly. Okay. Another name for retraction is adduction, when we're talking about the scapula. So we are adding it to the midline of the body. So if I know that rhomboids will perform that action, rhomboids has to attach to the scapula. And I think about that action. What that action is the scapula moving towards the spinous process of the vertebrae. I know that the origin has to be over here by the spinous process of the vertebrae, or on the spinous processes of the vertebrae, because the rhomboids are moving this structure towards there. So the insertion moves towards the origin. So if I can think about the action and what the action actually is, and I remember that the insertion, when this muscle is contracting, the insertion will move towards the origin. I put those two together. I figure out, okay, this muscle is moving this bone in this way, so it's moving it towards the origin. The origin has to be right here on the spinous processes. Rhomboids major and minor originate on the spinous processes of C7 through S, or like I said, it's early. C7 through T5. I don't know why I'm thinking about the sacrum here. Okay, C7 through T5 are the origins of the rhomboids. So when they contract, where they insert over here on the medial or vertebral border of the scapula. When they contract, they will move the insertion towards the origin. Okay, so that's kind of an easy way to remember kind of what happens with the muscles on the trunk and how you can figure out the origins and insertions of those. Just think about the actions, and the insertion will move towards the origin. So again, if you know the action, and let's use Pec Minor as another example, since I'm here for just a few minutes longer. So we'll use Pec Minor as an example. So it originates on ribs 3, 4, and 5 on these spots, and then inserts over here on the coracoid process. So if I know that Pec Minor protracts or abducts the scapula, I know that it's taking it forward. So it's coming forward in a forward manner. And abduction will take it away from the midline, right? Move a structure away. So if I know that, I know it has to be up here. Protracts the scapula, it has to be on the front. Obviously, pectoralis tells you it's on the front. You should know that. Pectoralis means chest. Okay? But I know the insertion is going to move towards the origin in some way. So I have to think about structures that are on the anterior portion of the scapula that the pec minor could actually attach to in order to pull the scapula forward. Okay, so there aren't a lot of structures that it could possibly attach to on the front that make a whole lot of sense. You might have the acromion process, the very front of the acromion process right here. You might consider that, but more likely you're going to consider the coracoid process because it's really close to the origins of the pectoralis minor. So you got the insertion, this part of the muscle that attaches to the coracoid process would pull the scapula forward at the coracoid process and move it towards the origin. Okay, so just one more example where the insertion is going to move towards the origin, and if you know the action of that muscle, then you know that the insertion has to be attached to that bone, and it has to move towards the origin, which would be right over here on the ribs. Okay. So again, it's like muscles that attach to the limbs. You're going to have the origin more proximal than the insertion. The insertion is going to be more distal, but that doesn't apply to the trunk. So you take away the arms and the legs, and those rules don't apply, unfortunately. Okay, so another example, psoas major, its origin is up here on the anterior surface of the lumbar vertebrae, and its insertion is right down here on the lesser trochanters. So the origin is more proximal than the insertion, even though it doesn't attach to the limb. The origin isn't on the limb. It's those rules still apply. It's going to be closer to the rest of the body, to the center of the body, than the insertion. Okay. So does anybody have any questions? If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'm just here kind of ranting and raving as I do. I'd like interaction. So please, if you have any questions about the MBLEx or any material you want me to cover, put it in the chat right now, and we can talk about it. Otherwise, I'm going to start shilling my products again, and I know nobody wants that. Although, really good products to shill, especially during this Black Friday weekend where you can get all of my stuff, the packages for at least $130 off, which is a killer deal. And you get a book mailed to you from me. I could even sign it if you want. I'll sign your book. I don't care. I got Sharpies all over the place. I'll sign your book. Just have to let me know. Send me an email. Let me know if you want me to sign your copy. Okay. What else? Man. I don't know. I'm waiting for somebody to say something in the chat. Say something in the chat. Otherwise, Calica and I are just going to hang out and have a lot of fun. Well, we can talk about the cranium if you want. So we have 4 bones that make up the cranium. And this, I was going to go get my other skull. This will do. So here's the cranium. This is the cranium. It's usually a lot bigger in a normal body. Usually a lot bigger. Okay, so we have 4 bones. Well, yes. Okay, we have 6 bones that make up the cranium, and 2 of them are paired. So you have 2 of 2 separate bones. So the one on the front, let me reattach. There we go. So the one on the front, right here, shouldn't be too difficult. It's on the front of the skull. It's called the frontal bone. Hi, can you talk about the muscles of the lower arm next, please? Tell you what, Josh, you call it the correct region of the body, and I'll talk about it. It's not the lower arm. We have 4. Here's a lesson. We have 4 regions of the upper limb. So this is the upper limb. Okay. This region is called the arm. This region is not the lower arm. This region is called the forearm. Then all of the carpals are right here, and those are the wrist. The wrist is a joint and a group of bones. So we have the wrist joint and we have the wrist itself, the carpals. And then the metacarpals and phalanges make up the hand. Okay. So here's how I operate. When it comes to MBLEx preparation, I don't like going over every single muscle in the body. You don't need to know every single muscle in the body. There are really only about 35 muscles that you need to know for test prep, for preparing for this test. Okay. You don't need to know every muscle in the body because you're not going to be tested on every muscle in the body. You are extremely likely to be tested on one of the 35 or so muscles that I have in my study guide, which is right here, which you can find on Amazon.com. Just search for MBLEx Test Prep Comprehensive Study Guide and Workbook 2021 edition. Look for my name, David Merlino, LMT. If you don't see my name, it's not my book. Let's see, the important thing to know. Or you can pick that up with your tutoring package. Just go to MBLExTestPrep.com, click on the shop, and you can get all of the tutoring sessions that I've already done, including kinesiology, where I go over all the muscles you need to know, all of the muscle actions, all of that fun stuff. Okay. But like I said, there are only about 35 muscles or so that you need to know, and there aren't very many of them that are part of the forearm. So I'll go over a couple that you could find mainly in the forearm, but I'm not going over. The fun thing about these muscles, and I think I said this during the last live stream. I keep hitting my pop filter. I apologize. I think I said this during my last live stream, is the majority of the muscles in the forearm are named after where they are and what they do, sometimes both. Okay, so we think about a muscle in the forearm that performs this action. It's a little difficult working with a miniature skeleton. Okay, this action, there we go. Now think about what action that is. Turning, rotating the palm so it's facing up. That is supination. So a muscle in the forearm that does that is supinator. If only every muscle were named that easily, of course. So that's an example of a muscle named after its action. Supinator supinates. Some muscles are named after their shapes, like pronator, teres. Pronator, also named after its action, pronation, and teres means round and long. So it's kind of a cylindrical, circular, tube-like shape. Okay. But then you have muscles like flexor carpi ulnaris, stuff like that, or pollicis longus, flexor, abductor pollicis, stuff like that. Those names tell you what the muscles do and where they attach, and that's really the only important information you need to know. So in general, we have two groups of muscles that we have to deal with. We have wrist flexors and wrist extensors. And I know I talked about this during my last live stream, so just kind of glance over it. The important things you need to know about those muscles is, like I said, all of the really important stuff is in the name, where they are and what they do. The only relevant information that you will probably be asked about on the MBLEx is where they originate, because they say where they insert in the name. Okay, so the muscles that originate, that you find on the anterior surface of the forearm, all originate right here on this little point. That is the medial epicondyle of the humerus. So the muscles on the anterior side of the forearm are the wrist flexors. They will flex the wrist. Again, we think about exactly what I was talking about earlier. The insertion moves towards the origin. So when we flex our wrist, we move it in this manner. Okay. So the insertion moves towards the origin. And all of those muscles originate right there on the medial epicondyle. So the entire group of muscles, the origin of the medial epicondyle of the humerus. And then we go to the posterior side. So on the posterior side of the forearm, we have another group of muscles. When those muscles contract, again, all of those muscles have the name of the action or the name of the attachment in the name. So when they contract, they move the wrist in this manner, bring it back like that. So if this is flexion, the opposite of flexion would have to be extension. So they extend the wrist. These are the wrist extensors on the posterior side of the forearm, and they all originate on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, right there. Just like Anconius, which originates right there and then inserts right over here on the olecranon process. So Anconius and the wrist extensors all originate on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. So I hope that helps out just a little bit with all of the muscles of the forearm. There are far too many muscles in the forearm and in the hand. You're not going to be tested on almost any of them. Okay, so just look at the name, and that tells you what they do, where they are, where they go. And then just remember that the flexors originate on the medial epicondyle and the extensors on the lateral epicondyle, excuse me. So we'll talk about one more muscle. You got it, Josh, you got it. So we'll talk about one more muscle where you might think of it in the forearm. I mean, the majority of that muscle is in the forearm, but the largest portion of that muscle is in the arm. Okay, so it's in this region. This muscle originates on the lateral supracondylar ridge of the humerus, right over here. And then inserts, it's on the lateral side, it will insert onto the styloid process of the radius, right there. So it originates here, inserts down here. And again, you can use your body as a cheat sheet. Think about, you look at your body and think about muscles that are in that area, and that can tell you what muscle it is if you know your muscles. That's the important thing. You have to know your muscles. You have to know the origins and insertions, of course, where those muscles actually are. And labeling on yourself is not a bad idea. I mean, not while you're going in to take the test. They wouldn't allow that. But while you are studying, label the muscles on yourself. You'll remember doing things like drawing on yourself and writing on yourself. You'll remember going through that process, doing that information that in that way, more than doing something like just reading a book, just straight reading. You have to, as much as my study guide helps, it's taking that information that's in the study guide and then applying it in a way like labeling it on yourself or drawing the muscle on yourself. That's going to get it to click in your head. Okay, so do things like that, and that can really help. So the muscle that originates right here on the lateral supracondylar ridge of the humerus, inserts right down here in the styloid process. This muscle is, a lot of people call it the Popeye muscle. How you can see this muscle is you make a fist like this. So this muscle will help to flex the elbow with the hand in neutral position. So it's not supinated, it's not pronated, not supinated, not pronated, neutral position, like you are shaking somebody's hand or you're making a fist, right? Make a fist. So make a fist and then put it under something heavy. And let me, having a chair that rolls on carpet, not the easiest thing in the world to manage. So you put it under something that's heavy. I'm going to use my own fist. You know what? Let's do this. I need to work on this muscle a little bit. It doesn't pop up as much on me as it does on other people for sure. But you put it under something heavy and then create an isometric contraction. You push up and push down, and that causes that muscle to kind of pop up a little bit. And you can see that for sure. Does anybody know what muscle that is? It originates on the lateral supracondylar ridge of the humerus and inserts onto the styloid process of the radius. Can anybody name that muscle? You make a fist, put your hand in neutral position, try to flex your elbow, and that muscle will pop up, become much more prevalent. And you can see it kind of contract down here on me. What do you think? What muscle is that? It's named after the bone that it inserts onto and the region of the body that it's found in. So now we have to use scientific terms, medical terminology, of course. This region is called the arm, right? Region between the shoulder and the elbow, that's the arm. What is the scientific term for this region? Starts with a B. Think about muscles that are in this area and terms that they might have in the name. Because again, muscles can be named after where they are and what they do, stuff like that. So this region. Think about the muscle biceps. What's the second word that comes after biceps in this region, for the muscle in this region? Think about the muscle that we talked about earlier right here, originates on the anterior distal shaft of the humerus. What muscle is that? Because that's named after this region. Nobody? This is the brachial region. Think of biceps brachii, means the muscle that has two heads in the arm. This muscle down here is brachialis, named after the brachial region, because it's the majority of that muscle is in the brachial region. Just a small amount crosses the elbow joint you find in the forearm, the insertion in the forearm. So this muscle is going to start with the word brachio, and then it inserts onto the styloid process of this bone. What is this bone right here? This bone. This is the radius. So that muscle that originates on the lateral supracondylar ridge, inserts onto the styloid process of the radius, is brachioradialis. And that muscle flexes the elbow with the hand in neutral position, like you're shaking someone's hand. Just like that. Perform that action. Okay, so that's one of those muscles of the forearm that you could see that you need to know, more specifics of. But if it's a muscle that crosses the wrist and inserts into the hand, if it moves the wrist in some way, you're not going to need to know that muscle other than where it originates. Okay. And again, it gives you that information where it inserts and what it does. If the muscle starts with the word extensor, it extends the elbow, or extends the elbow, extends the wrist primarily. But because it crosses the elbow on the posterior side, it will also help to just barely extend the elbow. Okay. So if a muscle crosses a joint, it does take an action on a joint. Not sure if everybody understands that. That's how it works. If a muscle crosses a joint, it has some sort of action on that joint. Okay, just remember that. So even though it barely, that group of muscles barely helps to extend the elbow, it does. They are synergists to the triceps brachii, which is the prime mover of elbow extension. Okay, so those muscles will tell you what they do. So if it says flexor in the name, it's going to flex the wrist. If it says extensor, it's going to extend the wrist. If it says carpi, it attaches to one of the carpals. If it says palmaris, it attaches to the palm, somewhere in the palm. Okay, digitorum, it attaches to the digits, and you have like an extensor digitorum in your leg that attaches to the digits and helps maybe move your toes back a little. Back is your toes can't go that far back, but it helps. It helps for sure. Okay, so just look at the names of the muscles, especially muscles in the forearm, and that can tell you what they do and the general location of where they are. Again, carpi, you're not going to be tested on which carpal bone some of these attach to. That's just not how it works. Okay, something like if it's a specific bone like the Pollux, then yes, you could be tested on that. But again, it's in the name. Pollux means thumb. Hallux means toe. So if you get hallucis longus or something like that, it's a big toe. Okay. So I hope that helps. Just look at the names with the muscles of the forearm. And that's why I don't include a ton of those muscles in the book. Again, you are extremely unlikely to be tested on the majority of those muscles. I don't want you wasting your time studying those muscles when you could be studying other things that are much more important and much more difficult and that you might be struggling with already. I don't want you to have to worry about all that other stuff. Okay, so I don't put those in my book for a reason. There's a reason I leave certain things out. The art of being wise is knowing what to overlook. And I know that you don't need to study the majority of those. Okay. But like I said, I do have about 35 muscles listed in this book that you need to know. I'll just throw a little demo up here. So here's, what is that? My camera's reversed, so I can't just read. That's iliacus. Okay, so has the origin and insertion labeled, has any medical conditions involved in it, has the action that iliacus does, hip flexion, and all the relevant information, the origin, insertion, action, innervation, synergists, and antagonists, all down here. A lot of great information on all of the muscles in this book. So if you need muscles, if you need to know muscles, this is the book you want to get. Again, the MBLEx Test Prep Comprehensive Study Guide and Workbook 2021 edition. And if you want tutoring, again, I do offer private tutoring, but I do have a tutoring package that has every tutoring session I've already done, recorded, audio and video, ready to go. One package includes a copy of this study guide that I'll personally sign it for you if you want. You just have to let me know beforehand. That is available for $149.99, which saves you $130 or so off the retail price. I think it might be $140. Actually, now that I think about it, it might be $140 off the normal price, Black Friday deal, of course. And if you already have my study guide, thank you. And I want to show a little bit of appreciation for you. So I made a package that's a little less expensive that has just the tutoring video and the tutoring audio and the practice test, of course, which is included with the one with the study guide. That's $124.99, which is still about $140 off the normal price. Okay. So if you are looking for tutoring and you want to do it on your time, not my time, because I schedule it when I have time available, definitely check that out. I was listening to my tutoring in the car the other day while I'm driving around, and I'm like, man, I'm actually learning a lot from this guy. Oh wait, it's me. That's me. I'm learning from me. It's really good for learning on the go. Okay, so go to my website, MBLExTestPrep.com, click on the store tab up at the top, and that'll take you right to the page that has the tutoring packages. You cannot go wrong. The second I get your mailing address, this book will be mailed out. And if you want it signed, you have to let me know. Just send me an email or something. Say, hey, sign my book. And I'm fine. I'll do it if you want. Okay. So that's going to do it for the live stream. If you have any questions or anything, you can hit me up on Facebook. Just go to the MBLEx Test Prep page and send me a message. You can email me directly, david@mblextestprep.com. Again, if you are looking for one-on-one private tutoring, I do offer that. Just let me know what days and times work for you. I'll try to work around your schedule. I think that's about $30 an hour that I do private tutoring for. So if that's what you want, you don't want to be in a group setting, and you don't want the stuff that I've already done, I'm fine with it. Just let me know, and we'll figure out a time and place. If it's just you and me, I'll work around your schedule for sure. Okay. So what else? If you are just looking for my study guide right here, you can go to my webpage, MBLExTestPrep.com, click on the little subsection of the store called study guides. You can click on that. It'll take you to a page that has information about all of my study guides and books. Or you can go to Amazon.com, search for MBLEx Test Prep. Look for this book. If it doesn't look like this, it's not my book. Look for my name for sure, David Merlino, LMT. That's how you know it's my book. Other people have stolen my MBLEx Test Prep name, unfortunately. So look for my name. That's how you know it's mine. Okay. So again, email me if you want, david@mblextestprep.com. I'm always here to help you study for your tests, and definitely take a look at those tutoring packages. It's a heck of a deal from a heck of a guy for you, the student preparing for the MBLEx. I guarantee you're going to like it. Okay. So until next time, what, 50 minutes? I went for 50 minutes talking, just you and me, just talking for 50 minutes. Outrageous. I was only planning on doing half an hour, 20 minutes over. That's how it always works with me. Okay. So until next time, this is David saying, what am I going to say? Arrivederci. Wait, whoa. I got one comment in. Yeah. Okay. The message, I already took my test 3 times and was 1 point away. Pisses me off. I wish I had money. This is horrible. I want to be an LMT so bad. You are so close. You are so close. So close. And that's why I recommend taking the practice tests that I've got. So you can see those strategies, those test strategies that I use, that I incorporate when I take a test. You see, maybe where you've done something that maybe you can improve upon, that can get you over that hump and get you just 1 point closer. Okay. So if all you want to do is take the practice test that I've got, watch the audio and video, I can do that too. You can definitely get that from me. Just send me an email, david@mblextestprep.com, and I'll get that sent your way. It's what is it? I think it's like $20 for a practice test with audio and video that go along with it, that explain everything. Definitely a reasonable price. But again, if you get any of the tutoring packages, either of them that I've got, including the study guide or without the study guide, you will get that practice test too. So it's like, at that point, you might as well just get the tutoring package, because you're getting everything and not just a small piece of it. Okay. So I'm sure the wife wants to get in here so she can actually get dressed and stuff. It's 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. You know, so sometimes we're a little lazy and we take our time getting ready for the day. So definitely check out my website, mblextestprep.com. Check out the tutoring packages. Again, click on the store link. That'll take you to the tutoring packages. Figure out which one works best for you. If you have any questions, email me, david@mblextestprep.com. Find me on Facebook. Find the MBLEx Test Prep page on Facebook. You can message me there. I'm always available. I've got nothing else going on. So just email me, send me a message, whatever. Okay. So until next time, David saying adios, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.